It's a new season for the 2012 Saint Ignatius Wildcats as the OHSAA playoffs kick off this weekend. The Wildcats come off a tough Week 10 loss in which they fought with the St. Edward Eagles, who are now the top team in the state as they top the Wildcats 20-13. Ryan Fallon was outstanding, and the Eagle defense did enough to contain Mike LaManna, Tim McVeigh, and the Wildcat offense. It was 20-13 in Week 10, but the Wildcats must put that behind them. Welcome to the SIBNs Across the Table alongside Greg Ziton. I'm John Fanta, and Greg, we head into the playoffs now. It's playoff time here at Wildcat High, and Saint Ignatius will be taking on the 7th seed Austintown Fitch as the Wildcats now cling to the number 2 seed in Region 1.
Yeah, the Austintown Fitch Falcons will be a pretty interesting matchup in round 1 for the Wildcats. Interestingly enough, when you look at them, it's a team fairly similar to St. Edward, at least offensively as far as what they like to do, how they set up. St. Ed's was a shotgun spread. They'd have 4 wide receivers and 1 running back. Fitch will throw a tight end in there. So 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and a running back. But similar plays, they like to pass an awful lot. And then with the running game, they like to do a lot of that counter blocking that we saw St. Edward doing. So the defense at least will have a pretty similar matchup.
Yeah, this is an Austintown Fitch offense that has put up quite a lot of points. And Greg said it, with the counter blocking, they will go back door with a lot of different replays. So the Wildcat defense is going to have to be ready for that. And they're going to be missing Kyle Berger this week, a middle linebacker. So the Wildcats will try to make up for that. They certainly have a lot of depth. Brett Bendikaitis is ready to step up to the plate along with C.J. Haig, Nick Chapik. And you look at this linebacker core, it's going to be interesting to watch without Berger, but they do have depth, and that's the good news.
Yeah, Berger really sticks out because of his explosiveness and the plays he makes in the backfield. But we saw a couple times this season, especially late in the game last week against St. Edward, with Chapik at the middle linebacker and then Bendikaitis and Hag at the outside linebackers. The Wildcats are still pretty solid in that unit.
The Wildcat defense will face off with quarterback Matt Fukos. And what stands out to him is the fact he does have a pretty solid arm coming in here with the Falcons, but he's going to face more pressure than he ever has, Greg. So what do you see the Falcons trying to do this week? And when we turn to their defense, we'll get to that. We have something to talk about there. But talk about their offense.
Sure. Well, looking at their offense, first of all, like you said, they score a lot of points. I think that's important to note. Not necessarily against the greatest of opponents, but either way, they've been putting up a lot of big numbers, so you know they can score. Futkos at quarterback, another dual-threat quarterback like we've seen a couple times this year. He'll be able to make some plays with his legs. Doesn't want to run, but I think with that Wildcat pressure that they should be able to get on him. A key will be trying to contain his running ability because he is a very adept runner. Last week, 3 rushing touchdowns Futkos had in their game against Youngstown Cardinal Mooney, who we, of course, saw Week 1, but a dual-threat quarterback and an offense that can be very explosive.
And he'll hand it off to running back Darren Hall. Hall had 2 touchdowns, he had well over 100 yards last week, about 139 yards against Youngstown Cardinal Mooney. He had a very solid night as Fitch really knocked out Cardinal Mooney 49-7, one of the worst defeats that Cardinal Mooney has had, as they said after the game. So you look at that victory here. It's coming in Week 10. We know the Wildcats took down Youngstown Cardinal Mooney pretty handily as they really swarmed the Cardinals in Week 1. What do you think about those 2 games, and do they correlate to you?
I think that the Cardinal Mooney team that lost really badly to Fitch in Week 10 was probably a lot different than the Mooney team we saw Week 1 at Cleveland Brown Stadium. I think a team, if you're having the kind of season Mooney had, going through the season, I'm sure part of the reason their season didn't go as well as they had hoped, I'm sure there were a couple injuries along the way, but also, when you're a team like that used to winning every year, they're pretty much like the Wildcats, just the Division III version if you look back a couple years. But as you go on in the season, if you just keep losing and losing demoralizingly, you're going to have a lower team morale and probably not play quite as well towards the end of the season. But it is a significant win, especially with the 49-7 margin for the Falcons.
The Wildcats offense is going to have to try to rebound after they really struggled last week. They got near the red zone. The 2 key possessions that really stood out to me for the Wildcats were the two first that happened after halftime, the two first of the second half, where the Wildcats drove down both times near the St. Edward red zone, and both turning over the football. Whether it was Kevin Cavalick fumbling after making a reception, Mike Lavana, the pocket collapsing on him, and he had trouble, lost the ball. Greg, I think it's safe to say that the Wildcats need to execute better and hang on to the football.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say that the Wildcat offense we saw against St. Edward Saturday night, honestly, that's not the Wildcat offense we're used to seeing. It just, apart from Tim McVeigh, that offense just really looked out of sync. The line gave up a few too many, tough blitzes by the Eagles' defensive line. Lamanna just had a hard time getting in a rhythm throwing the football. He missed a fair number of passes. He had a couple drop-by receivers as well. And also, when you look back at it, the offense just kept putting themselves in tough situation after tough situation. They'd have a lot of negative plays to start off drives or, on first and second down. And Tim McVeigh can only get you so many first downs. And the other thing with Tim, and I don't know if you can really fault him for this, but we're used to him scoring multiple touchdowns a game. The Eagles gave him a lot of yards, but they were able to keep him out of the end zone, so that was key. And then this week, you look as far as the pressure from the defense, the Falcons should be able to get some, mainly because of Billy Price, 6'4", 305-pound defensive end committed to Ohio State. And if you want a player to watch on the Falcon defense, it's him.
Price is a big man, and the Wildcats are going to have to prepare for him being off the edge, too. You see, 305 pounds. Some other websites estimate him at about 310 pounds. You see that, and you might think, well, he's got to be a bit of a low but slow. Well, Greg, not only is he big, but he also does have some speed with him. I was talking to offensive linemen. They said that Price can run a 5 even in a 40-yard dash. That's quite amazing. So the Wildcats are going to have to be ready to go for him. And you have to think that they'll prepare by putting Kevin Cavalick in there at tight end, give Price a jab, and also off the edge, we're going to have to be ready offensively, because if Price gets into the pocket, Mike Lamanna may be in a danger zone, and the Wildcats are going to have to be ready.
Yeah, exactly. Price, it's interesting. Normally you put the biggest defensive lineman at defensive tackle, just if he's slow or just because he's big, but he's fast enough they can put him at defensive end, and he's effective there, so that's something. So the offensive tackles, Jimmy Byrne and also Mike Big Ag, are going to have to be ready, probably mostly Big Ag. And then you look at, like you mentioned, we'll probably see some tight ends from the Wildcats. Also expect a lot of formations if there's no tight end with a fullback, just for some extra help blocking off the edge. But Price will definitely be a challenge for that offensive line and any fullbacks or tight ends we see.
So let's just take a quick look at Region 1 and the way it looks. The 1-8 matchup will be the St. Edward Eagles and the Mansfield Wildcats. That will be happening in Lakewood Stadium, as the Eagles have the 1 seed here in Region 1. In the 2-7 matchup, of course, Saint Ignatius and Austintown Fitch. The 3-6 matchup will come from Willoughby South, where Kareem Hunt and Willoughby South will take on North Royalton. The Bears have had a very impressive season, but they come off a Week 10 loss to Hudson. They fell 19-7, so they have got to try to bounce back. It's no easy task trying to take on Kareem Hunt. And then in the 4-5 matchup, I think it's the most intriguing matchup on the region, as it, when you look at 4 and 5, Mitch Trubisky and the Mentor Cardinals. Does Trubisky have a run in him here for a state championship? I know that Coach Trevisano and Trubisky, they both think that they can try to make a run. And Warren Harding, one of the most interesting teams. They're a team that has come out, and they came out slow because they fell to Fitch, Greg, in Week 1. And that was quite a way to start off the season. But since then, Warren Harding has really run off a good year.
Exactly, that loss for Warren Harding to Fitch, 24-10, that was in Week 1. Since then, they ran the table after that. 9 wins to finish 9-1, so they are definitely a team to watch. And any team that's playing Mentor, though, you've got to look and see if their defense is capable of containing that spread. They may have the weather on their side. You never know what it'll look like Saturday. But, that 4 very interesting games in Region 1 in the first round. Not any of them really are going to be blowouts, you would think.
And then you look at the other regions, and it gets very interesting from there, all the way from Region 1 to Region 4, where the 1-8 matchup is Coleraine and Cincinnati St. Xavier. Wow, that's a Region 4 Week 1 matchup. That's a great way to get the playoffs started. So, key players that you're looking to watch here in this one. I think it all starts with Mike LaManna and trying to see how he handles coming back.
Oh, without a doubt, when you look at what the Wildcats offense wants to do, this Fitch defense is going to stack the box. They like to put 6, sometimes 7 guys in the box. They play a base 3-3 defense, but a lot of times they'll bring up a safety. They like to blitz 5, sometimes 6. So there will be room to pass. We saw that, on the film when Fitch fell to Maslin. Maslin was able to find a lot of room for their receivers, especially over the middle, where the linebackers would be if they didn't come up. But you got to look for LaManna to rebound because you need him to have a functioning offense. I mean, the Wildcats offense through the first 9 games of the season was as effective as it was because you had McVay running effectively and you had LaManna playing very well at quarterback last week. One of those elements was kind of missing, so they definitely need to get that back if they're going to make a good playoff run.
McVay had 192 rushing yards, but he was drooling through the middle, finding the edge, cutting it to the outside, just could not find the end zone. The Wildcat red zone offense, that's something that definitely needs to improve this week. So, Saint Ignatius, folks, don't forget about the first 9 weeks of the regular season, and don't forget about this Saint Ignatius coaching staff. Coach Kyle sits at 299 wins. He aims for his 300. Saturday at Byers Field, the Wildcats look to refresh, regain their momentum at Byers Field, 7 o'clock as the regional quarterfinals kick off in the OHSAA. It's going to be very interesting. It's playoff time, and the Wildcats take on the Falcons for the 3rd time in their history. Last time these two teams met was in 1992, and this will be 3rd all-time meeting. They've met now. This will be the 3rd time, and they've met all 3 times in the playoffs. So they do have their history. Should be a lot of fun, and we know that the Falcons, Greg, it's a defense that has only given up more than 10 points one time. So, all the 9 other times they've given up 10 points or less, and that one time was to a team we have to watch in Region 2, of course, Massillon, Washington. The Tigers have come back. They've had a very strong year. So, it should be very interesting to see this Austintown Fitch team, and there is a bit of a history between us two.
That there is in the 2 playoff matches between these 2 teams. Each team's won once, so team going for the series lead and also, of course, to advance in the playoffs. It's win or go home. There's no other way to say it.
It absolutely is. Mike LaManna and the Wildcats hope to bounce back at Byers Field in Parma, 7 o'clock on Saturday night. The SIBN begins with the Prudential Lucian Realty pregame show at 6:30, right on the dot. Tune in this weekend, Saturday night, to the Saint Ignatius Broadcasting Network. Thanks for watching Across the Table.